Everything We Know is a Lie, Part 6. But first, I'm going to give you guys a little thought experiment. I want you to imagine a colorblind woman named Mary. Mary cannot see any color whatsoever, and so she dedicates her whole life to understanding the experience of color using its physical properties and correlates. So she has a PhD in physics, another one in neuroscience. She can tell you the exact regions of the brain that light up when experiencing certain colors, right down to the oscillation patterns of that activity. Therefore, she understands the waveform of color and the neural correlates of color, but she will never be able to understand how the two of them interact until she experiences it herself. And the physics can explain it to her, other people can describe it to her, but she will never actually understand the experience because she is unable to experience it herself. Now, this is what we call the hard problem of consciousness. It is the idea that you can know everything there is to know about how something comes to be, that something being consciousness, but not why it feels such a way. So this is the problem that asks, why is it that we have subjective experience? Why is that necessary? Why is it necessary that we are aware of our human condition? Why can't we just be walking around the earth like philosophical robots? Now, to quote the famous physicist Schrödinger, the universe without consciousness is like a play without an audience. Because what does it matter if this all exists if there isn't something to be aware of it? Now, this is where, if you haven't watched my other videos, I'd highly recommend you do so. But for the people who have, specifically the science nerds, a lot of you have talked about how this is all just panpsychism and there is no scientific basis for it. And panpsychism is essentially the philosophy behind fundamentalism. It's the idea that all living things have consciousness. However, and I could be entirely wrong about this, again, I could be wrong about all of this, so question what I'm saying and do your own research. But from my understanding, fundamentalism actually takes it one step further and proposes that consciousness is one of the fundamental building blocks of all matter, not just the complex living systems that we have on our planet. And I know said science nerds are going to be like, well, that actually makes it even more unfalsifiable. But what if I told you there are scientific theories that are A, falsifiable, B, testable, and C, are informing experiments that are running now? Because there are, and I want to introduce you guys to integrated information theory. So in a nutshell, it proposes that consciousness as we experience it, or what I would like to call awareness of being, awareness of what's happening in the day-to-day, it comes about as a product of a system that can integrate information. Meaning the more a system can integrate information, the more conscious it is. It proposes that phi, a mathematical value, can quantify how much information is integrated within a system. Therefore, a high phi value would be like one of a human brain, which has more synapses or connections than there literally are stars in the Milky Way galaxy. And an item with low phi, like, say, a phone, would have little or no consciousness, which is how it can test fundamentalism. Because if a material property has no value for phi, then it obviously isn't conscious and all of this is wrong. But basically it proposes that consciousness itself is intrinsic, rather than emerging from complex brain systems. And I think part of the reason why a lot of people struggle with this idea is because it proposes that we aren't really special in any way, shape, or form like we like to think that we are. We like to call ourselves the most intelligent beings on the planet, but then we measure the intelligence of other species based on our own metrics. Like, of course, an orangutan isn't going to be able to operate in a concrete jungle the same way that we would. That's not its world. And yet we measure its consciousness and its sentience/intelligence based on our own metrics, which I think has led to the flawed view that we are the only beings that are aware or conscious of the world around us, which has really important implications when we look at global warming and everything that's going on in the world right now. But I'm going to save that for a separate video, along with some of the leading ideas in physics that actually kind of sound a lot like this. But I'm doing my research because I want to make sure that everything I say is as accurate as possible. So that second video you're going to have to wait for. In the meantime, though, I have started up a YouTube channel where I will be going through all of this and more in a whole lot more depth. So go check out the link in my bio and subscribe and make sure to hit post notifications so that you get notified when I drop the first video. Okay, love you guys, bye.